Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Take up your cross and follow me, for to save your life, you must lose it. That's such a familiar saying of Jesus's, and it's full of wisdom and it's counterintuitive. Losing your life to save it. Most of us are much more tuned into saving our life just by keeping things the way they are, the way it is. I mean, there are times we'll push the envelope, stir things up a bit, but there's a whole lot more to be said for predictability and a lot of anxiety when things are not predictable. Frankly, we like the status quo. We humans don't do well when the status quo is not what's happening. I heard the story of a man who got up each morning as he always had. He put on a coat and a tie. He drove away from the house and he went to the public library of another community because he could not face telling his family that he had lost his job. So he had to keep something intact. So he tried to keep things just the way they always had been, which worked for a while until it became obviously there were financial problems in the household. There's a kind of security in keeping things as they've always been, even when it's an illusion. But life has the habit of interfering. We lose a job, a good friend dies, but how often we try to keep things the way they are. That was Peter's desire as Jesus told the disciples that it was necessary for the Son of Man to suffer, to be crucified, to die, and to be raised. Peter didn't get what Jesus meant and the power of what he was saying, and so he rebukes Jesus. Don't talk like that. But Jesus was quick to rebuke Peter, get behind me, Satan. Now, Jesus' response seems kind of harsh, especially when Peter had just confessed that he is the Messiah. Peter seemed to know who Jesus really is, but to be rebuked so quickly, all because he didn't like hearing that it was necessary for Jesus to die. Peter wanted to hold on to what is. But Jesus' message, it's others. Let go, be willing to die to what we want to hold on to so badly. Well, my friends, there is a bit of wisdom in that. If we look a little closer and dig a little deeper, we realize that Jesus' advice isn't so strange after all. It's very down to earth and practical. It is dispensed by advice columnists, and it fills the Old Testament book of Proverbs. Scholar Joel Marcus reminds us that back in the 7th century BC, the Greek lyric poet Tyrtaeus wrote, "The man who risks his life in battle has the best chance of saving it, and the one who flees to save it is the most likely to lose it." In other words, in the midst of battle, stay cool. It's impossible to keep a cool head if you get all panicky and try to steer clear of the danger. A fleeing soldier is easily shot in the back. On the other hand, intrepid soldiers sometimes miraculously survive even when companions are falling to their left and right because they act in a very purposeful and deliberate way that actually is unnerving to the enemy. Marcus continues, Jesus takes this piece of secular and military wisdom and transposes it onto a different plane. And the transposition is apt, because the present situation is one of a fierce battle, a climatic battle between God's army and that army of personified evil in the world. From the onset of his ministry, Jesus announced that God is about to come into the world, invade the world, and smash evil's strongholds. In fact, one of the most common nuances of evangelion, the word usually translated as gospel, is also good news from the battlefield. Jesus calls people to follow him bravely into the final battle, without looking back, without hesitating, without giving a thought to the danger that following might pose to their lives. And he promises that those who do follow will, against all expectation, find life. This odd twist of battlefield wisdom, Christian faith affirms that this terrible, this degrading death of Jesus's, it's a victory, and not just a momentary one, but the victory by which God has vanquished the power of evil once and for all, and with it unleashed a vitality and a hope that just isn't hovering over everything, but erupts in areas of weakness and suffering and death. One recalls a friend who described to him her 20-year battle with cancer, a battle that she had thought she had won 10 years ago. But then she was beginning to fight it anew in recent years. But she says there's a difference this time, a difference than the battles she waged 20 years ago and the ones she waged in the last 5. She says this time she senses a presence with her, one that she says identifies with the suffering Christ, who assures her that everything is going to be okay. The hard part is she doesn't know what okay really means. Whether it means, for example, that she's going to live, or whether it means she's going to die. But despite that uncertainty, she feels she can trust this voice that she hears when it says, everything is going to be all right. Now, there's a price to be paid for that kind of assurance. It means looking death coldly in the eye. As most of you know, you've heard me talk about the church that taught me to be a pastor, Bedford Park Presbyterian Church in the Bronx. It's located just north of Fordham University, Fordham Road, near the Bronx Zoo and the Botanical Gardens. It was once a thriving residential community, an easy subway ride down into Manhattan. The church had been founded in 1900 by a young new pastor by the name of Henry Sloane Coffin. In the 1920s, the current building took shape, and a church house, like many urban churches, was attached with a gym, a kitchen, a bowling alley on the ground floor, classrooms and offices on the second and third, and an apartment for the pastor on the top. The congregation thrived until the 1960s. Children of members left the neighborhood to live in the suburbs. And the urban crisis that hit cities across the nation like this one took hold as well in the Bronx. And by the time I came, that congregation was struggling, living Sunday offering to Sunday offering, and a mere handful in worship. The only thing that kept it going was that the presbytery had started a new Korean church development, and that church development rented space from the Bedford Park Church. Now, that Korean startup was growing rapidly as immigrants flooded into the neighborhood. They had a place that offered them the support of family and friends, a common language and culture. Well, it was obvious to me from the very beginning that the future was bleak for the original church. The people had tried just about everything they could to get more members and to keep things going. But invariably, talk was about remember when. The one place of vitality, that Korean church. who regularly invited members of what we just self-described ourselves as the Anglo Church to picnics, to fellowship events. Their pastor had me preach at the service when it was officially organized as a congregation. It was kind of a slow sermon. I'd do a sentence in English and it would follow by a sentence in Korean, translated in Korean. But finally, a night came at a session meeting, and it was voted to use the dish fund to pay the bills. Yep, that's what I said, the dish fund. It was a fund that had been established by the women of the church years ago to replace broken china. And it was the last little bit of savings and assets that the church had. So it was time to take a good hard look at what God was really calling the congregation to do. After a lot of study, talk, and prayer, the session did look death in the eyes and voted to ask the presbytery to close the church and to turn the building and the remaining assets over to the new Korean congregation. 4 days later, a longtime member of the church died. The day before her funeral, I got a call from her attorney. She had no survivors. She left everything to the church. The contents of her apartment, all her assets. Now, they weren't in the millions, but they were in the thousands. So that Sunday, the session quickly called a congregational meeting, asked me if the presbytery had taken any action. Well, no presbytery acts in a week. And so they knew, okay, it was safe. They voted to rescind the motion to close. Well, I remember feeling pretty dejected by that action because we had worked really hard. I had worked really hard to get them to that place to decide it was time to close. It just felt like we were denying reality. $80,000 wasn't going to make that much of a difference. I continued to serve that church another year before I was called to a church in New Jersey. During that time, we did get a single-parent ministry off the ground in cooperation with a local branch of City College School of Nursing. Things felt a little different. But it was a couple of years ago at a regional meeting, I ran into the presbytery executive for New York City that included the Bedford Park Church. And he said, "Sue, do you know what's going on at Bedford Park? The numbers aren't huge. The percentage is. Bedford Park has the highest percentage in the presbytery of new Hispanic members. And the relationship with the Korean congregation continues to grow." And he added, "I think it's because they did die. They died to all that was holding them back. They died to what they once were. They found their life by losing it." A few years later, the Bedford Park Church and the Korean church merged. Young adult Koreans being raised in the United States wanted a service in English. And to this day, there's a bilingual ministry going on, or maybe trilingual. The church still struggles. The North Bronx is still not an easy place to be. But there is a witness to the gospel that continues in that neighborhood, Presbyterian style. A gospel that reminds us to lose our life is to save it. When Jesus rebuked Peter for denying the way of the cross, if we listen closely, there's an invitation saying, "Get behind me. Get behind me. Get in step with me. Follow me." We don't always understand that as the way. It's counterintuitive to the way we think we can save our life. And yet, in the wisdom of Jesus, we follow. We follow in a way that is narrow and risky, but that is the way that leads to new life and new hope found in our Lord Jesus Christ. Christ, the one who died for us, who rose for us, who reigns in power for us and praise for us. Thanks be to God. Amen.